Okay, hi everyone. This is a video response to number of comments by a YouTube user who goes by Jackruss4, Jackruss number 4, and he was commenting that it was impossible that this Kershaw with its SG2 laminated blade could be under-hardened. And so this is not the actual knife which was shown in the last video. This knife is that knife's sisters. They're both Junkyard Dog SG2 BLEMs. Physically, they're basically perfect, but performance-wise, the SG2 has been under-hardened. And I've been thinking about how to demonstrate that, and so I came up with a plan. Now let me be clear that this is not supposed to be a pot shot at Kershaw or anything else like that. Both the knives were sold as BLEMs, got them from Kershaw guy, great seller. And so this isn't supposed to be some sort of warrantyable claim or anything like that. The knives do perform all right. They are quite thin behind the edge, which is what grants them most of their performance, but the steel breaks down quite readily, and so I don't know if they were marked as BLEMs because they discovered all of these came out under-hardened, or what, but I certainly don't know what the defect is on either of the knives. There was nothing I saw which would have rendered them as such. So anyway, now we're going to address Mr. Jackruss4 as to why it is in fact possible that such a miracle steel as SG2 could be under-hardened. It's also worth noting SG2 is relatively low carbon, low carbide, low alloy steel. It's only got like 1.25% carbon, roughly. It's only about 25% alloy. Contrast that against the other end of the spectrum, this Rex 121 knife by Farad, which is over 50% carbide and is actually the lowest toughness, appropriately hardened knife I've ever tested. You could take this against just the edge of your desk and roll the blade into it and just pop a chip out of the edge like that, which is not necessarily a fault of the knife. It's just, you know, the steel was not designed for that sort of lateral edge strength. I suppose that's not impact, so it's not technically toughness, but we will get into this. So anyway, the test here, this is 24 gauge magnet wire. It's copper. The red coating, for those who aren't in the electronics world, means that this wire is enameled with an enamel that is low temperature, that you burn it off with your soldering iron as you solder to it, as opposed to some of the other colors you see. The color rating indicates, I guess, thermal tolerance. So that will have no real effect on the test. And so here we have a whole suite of different knives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure each knife's apex geometry. You'll have to bear with me. I have to bring it up above the camera close to my face to check the angle. And then I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to visually inspect the edge and use my fingernail to see if there's any damage from cutting this. And so, general rule of knives, if you're not aware, copper versus steel, steel should always win. So, let's see, what is this knife sharpened at? This appears to be, let's just try. Yeah, it looks about right. This edge appears to be 40 degrees inclusive. Yeah, somewhere between 40 and 45 degrees inclusive at the apex. It has no micro bevel or micro convex to it. And so let's just put a few cuts into it. Okay, we're seeing a certain amount of forces being applied, and the blade is actually failing to, there we go, that cut. Okay, hang on, we'll test after each one. You can feel and you can see minor bit of damage there. Let's try up here. Again, feel and see minor damage. You can see it reflect light. It's deformation in this case. Steel's all there. Same thing again. I mean, we're talking still relatively small amounts of damage, but we're not side loading the edge or anything like that. It's just, and you can also see it's taking a certain amount of force to do this. So clearly this was not what you'd call a huge success. Able to cut it, but sustain some damage. What else can we do? Here's one end of the one sort of end of the spectrum. This is a para 2 in M390. Actually, let's start at the low toughness end of the spectrum. This is H1. Not a particularly hard steel. Excuse me. Excuse what I just said about the toughness ends of the spectrum. This is H1. It is not a particularly hard steel. Edge stability is not particularly high. So far, I've never actually managed to chip H1, but it usually deforms pretty readily when pushed. This knife, because of its relatively low performance, the apex angle is about 45 degrees inclusive. So let's just try it. Okay, 1, slide down a bit. 2, it is resisting cutting, probably because it's not a very sharp angle. And third one failed to cut, just because I can't get the knife down in enough. You can see it's pushing the conductor in a bit. So what do we have here? Gosh, I'll be darned if I can... There might be... One of those cuts might have produced the tiniest little bit of damage. Let's repeat one more, just so I can see for sure. We'll be up here at the tip. Okay. Up there. No damage. So yeah, we'll say that can take that. No damage. This knife, not actually my knife. Doesn't actually say the steel on it. It says Cobalt MV, but I believed at the time that this might have been SG2. I could be wrong. Again, like I said, not my knife. Kershaw has since altered or discontinued this model, so I can't say for sure what it is. I would have to ask the owner. But it's a chef knife, and it's not terribly hard, although I do believe it to be harder than this knife. So let's just give it a quick test. This knife is freshly sharpened. And see how this does. That resisted cutting. Geez, I need to mark this or something. Okay, right below that. If it doesn't take damage. Oh, does that mean I can't find the damage, or the damage doesn't exist, right? A tree falls in a forest. Not cutting it very readily. It requires a fair bit of force, but there we go. Seems to be doing this 0 damage, despite a quite thin edge. Forgot to check the apex angle on this. Let's see what we got here. I'm guessing I put a pretty obtuse edge angle on this because I know the person who owns this knife is not terribly kind to it. No, maybe I didn't. It looks like it's about 30 degrees inclusive. So, relatively high angle. I actually thought I put a lower angle than this on. Okay, well, learn something new every day. What else can we try? How about some infi? High toughness steel, not super high hardness. According to Jerry, it's around 58 Rockwell. Wonder what I sharpened this at. Looks like 40 degrees. 40 degrees inclusive. Cut. No damage. Cut. No damage. I mean, I'm not expecting damage, but you never know. Cut. No detectable damage. Finding a bit of a pattern here. Okay, let's go to something high carbide volume, but still relatively high toughness. CPM M4, which is what this is, has always been a favorite of mine because, oh, and don't let me get away with it. If you see any damage up here, this is right here already. This was from some lateral edge testing. You can see just a tiny bit of light reflecting off of the edge there, and that's because I actually cut into aluminum and twisted it out sideways, basically scraping longitudinally across the aluminum, which produced remarkably little damage considering, in my opinion at least. So you can just barely see. It will still, at this point, shave. It just slightly deflected the angle of the edge in that location, which is why it reflects light at a different angle ever so slightly by a few degrees, just a few degrees, than the actual apex. So let's see what we're running here. No, jeez. I have this relatively obtuse, don't I now? About 40 degrees inclusive. 1, 2. I'm really not expecting anything here. I've done these tests on M4 a lot. Yeah, nothing. No surprises. This is why, part of the reason why one of my favorite steels in folders is CPM M4. It just tolerates things like this really well. Sal, if you're watching, we need an M4 Para 2 any day now. Do it in carbon fiber. I'll exchange sexual favors for that knife. It might be so good that my girlfriend wouldn't even mind, or my wife, or whatever you want to fucking call her. Jesus, if she's watching, she'll murder me. Love you, dear. Boy, I wish I hadn't said any of that. Okay, so where are we here? This knife, it's important to note, has a micro bevel on it, and the micro bevel makes it 40 degrees per side, but the actual bevel behind it thins the edge out. M390, which is what this is not known for being terribly high toughness, lower than S90V by most accounts. It's important to note that of all these knives, this is the one that was not freshly sharpened for this test. I just whipped it out of my pocket from EDC. And I'd actually been doing no damage. I'd actually been doing experiments on M390 with this because M390 has good good hardness and good corrosion resistance, but relatively low toughness. So I've been saying, this is from my 9/10 discussion, why don't you take a knife that's as close as you can get to failing and then push it just on the other side of that line. Okay, S30V. This knife is rocking a very small micro bevel. It's so thick behind the edge I had to put this very large bevel on it, which is what you're seeing here. This knife is not terribly hard. I don't think I'm going to be able to measure this micro bevel. It's so small. My best guess for the micro bevel, and it is exactly that, would be, because I made the mistake of blending it in, would be somewhere on the order of 40 degrees inclusive, but I honestly can't say. So, however unscientific this is, you can have at me. But it was maybe 1/10 of a millimeter wide to start with, and then I blended it down. This is why, Cliff, if you're watching, I'm sorry. This is why I don't like convexes. It's not that they don't have their performance advantages, it's that it makes it hard to go back and do experiments like this and know your actual angle. I am kind of expecting this knife to take a little damage because the bevel is relatively thin at the edge, and this S30V is relatively soft and relatively... I would have guessed it was relatively low stability. Jesus. Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Still gorgeous. No light reflection, no No edge damage. Okay, LMAX. This is Scrapyard. This is a real favorite of mine. Very thin behind the edge. You've seen my reviews on them. Gosh, if I can't get edge damage on one of these knives, everybody's going to say that I'm just BSing it. Well, what are you going to do? I'll hold out hope for Rex 121. How's that? Oh, geez, that cut easily. 2 and 3. I may have gotten damage on that last one, because I accidentally snuck into an existing divot there, which might have loaded the blade sideways a bit. Or laterally loaded the blade. No, nothing that I can see, at least. Nothing, no light reflection, nothing your fingernail can feel. Okay, this Farad Mule came quite thick behind the edge, so you can see a big bevel I put on here, just below the primary grind. But in fact, we're running a micro bevel here in order to maintain enough toughness to cut substrate. So let's measure that micro bevel. I'm betting it's... Yeah, we're slightly above 45 degrees inclusive here. And that's just to enhance stability on this edge. So let's see what we can get. I shouldn't have cut in an area where there were cuts, and I could be loading this one because I know this knife can chip. Let's see. Was that there before? Is that damage from loading the blade sideways? Okay, let's do another one just to make sure that it's not causing damage. 1, 2, 3, and no damage. So, just to make sure I'm not faking it till I make it, let's do this again. Right up at the tip. 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know if you're able to see them, but there you are. 1, 2, 3 little specks of light right there. Just put those in. We'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. And now you can see more. So, geez, that one is freaking monster. What the fuck? Anyway, so there you go. That's why I say this knife is under-hardened. We have knives which are relatively low hardness, like H1. We have other knives that are kitchen knife level hardness, so that I always assume that kitchen knives are hardened relatively low to respond better to steeling. I don't know if that's factual or not, but I do find that broadly, even some of the nicer kitchen knives are a bit what you'd call on the soft side. Maybe it's just so that they can tolerate repeated banging into cutting boards or something. Don't know. Couldn't tell you. But it is soft. It's deformation, not chipping. My work with it on stones indicates it's quite soft. It's not down to some sort of magical geometry or anything like that. And it's not just some crazy perception of my mind. So there you go, Jackruss4. I do actually know what I'm talking about, and I can actually run a test to demonstrate it. So yeah, in future, I should also mention that another YouTuber came to me regarding this user and said that I shouldn't pay mind to him because he's just an internet troll. He just likes to troll people. So we should clear up a few other things quickly while we're on the subject. SG2 is not necessarily bad steel, but it's certainly not a miracle steel by any stretch. It's not terribly special. And also I'm making this video not as much for Jackruss4, but as for my other viewers who might have read some of his comments. So I want to make sure that that's all cleared up, that nobody's, you know, freaking out because of what he's said, confused people or anything else like that. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope this wasn't too deadly boring. Again, sort of my philosophy, you should do knives at a geometry such that steel versus copper, steel should always win. Should not be an issue or a subject of discussion, really. So, yep, like, subscribe, favorite, share, all those usual YouTube things. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.